After drinking the coffee prepared by my wife, Sophia, I passed out. It was not until 3 days later that I opened my eyes and found myself lying in a hospital ward. It turned out that my wife had drugged me and transplanted one of my corneas to her first love who had just returned from abroad. I lost the sight in one eye, yet she was eager to kick me out of the house to welcome her first love. My heart was as good as dead. 3 years of my companionship and care ultimately couldn't compete with the white moonlight in her heart. So, I decided to disappear, but she begged me to come back like a madwoman. However, it was already too late. Let's start the story. If you like it, remember to subscribe. My wife, who had always been a tough career woman, suddenly became tender and affectionate. I thought she had finally decided to let go of the person in the deepest part of her heart and truly accept me. She prepared coffee for me, and I drank it without any precautions. But soon, I felt dizzy and then lost all consciousness, falling straight onto my desk. My last memory was of 2 blurred figures at the door, one was my wife and the other was a man. After that, I completely lost consciousness. It was not until 3 days later that I woke up. In front of me was a white ceiling, and everything around was white. I was in a hospital ward. A sharp pain came from my right eye, and I couldn't help but cover it and cry out. The nurse heard me and rushed over, quickly helping me lie down. "Mr. James, please don't move around, or the wound will get inflamed." I asked in confusion. "Wound? What wound?" The nurse looked at me and said, "You actually volunteered to donate one of your corneas to Mr. David. It's really admirable." I was shocked. No wonder my eye hurt so much. But I had never said I would donate my cornea to anyone. What was going on? I thought of the coffee my wife gave me and gradually understood something. Just as I was thinking, the clicking sound of high heels came from the door. I recognized it as my wife's footsteps. She was walking towards my ward. But her footsteps stopped at the adjacent ward, and then she opened the door and went in. I was a bit curious, so I struggled to get up and walked to the adjacent ward. The scene in front of me left me stunned and I couldn't come back to my senses for a long time. The man on the hospital bed had his right eye bandaged and was leaning against the bedside. His ward was a super VIP room. Sophia was holding a bowl of congee, feeding him spoon by spoon, looking at him tenderly as he ate. In the 3 years of our marriage, Sophia had never treated me so tenderly. With her, I felt more like a subordinate. The man in front of me saw me at the door and actually greeted me. "This must be James." Sophia made lean, neat congee herself. "Come and have some too." I was surprised that he knew me, and even more surprised that Sophia would cook by herself. Usually, she never entered the kitchen. There were 4 or 5 aunts just for cooking at home. She could ask different aunts to cook whatever cuisine she wanted. But today, she cooked for a man. When Sophia heard this, she turned around. The tenderness in her eyes disappeared instantly, replaced by her usual cold face. "You're awake. Have a good rest." Seeing her like this, the grievance in my heart welled up. "Sophia, what are you doing? What about my eye? I'm asking you, what about my eye?" I finally couldn't hold back and shouted at her. "James, don't forget your identity. What's the big deal about one cornea? You can still see with the other one, can't you?" Sophia said impatiently. "David is back. What's the point of you staying by my side?" I looked at the man in front of me whose eyebrows, eyes, and chin were somewhat similar to mine. I instantly understood everything. He was David, Sophia's first love from many years ago. Sophia had chased him for a long time, but they broke up when they graduated. I was his substitute. I had known this for a long time, but I didn't expect that after he came back, Sophia would be so cold and heartless to me. Seeing that I didn't leave, Sophia frowned and said, "It's just asking for one of your corneas. Consider it as me buying it for David. So, how much do you want?" I was a pilot, and eyesight was extremely important to me. But with just one sentence from her, she ruined my life. I was so angry that I was shaking, but I had no way to deal with her because she had more money than she knew what to do with. Sophia was a real estate tycoon in New York, involved in 50% of the real estate industry. Sophia was 3 years older than me. When I first met her, I was working in a Western restaurant while I was still a senior in college. She left me her phone number and told me that if I was willing to be with her, she would give me endless money and fame. At that time, my grandmother was in poor health, and I couldn't earn enough for her one-day hospital fee no matter how hard I worked. So, I agreed to her. It was no different from being kept. The only difference was that after I graduated from college, Sophia and I got married, making me feel more at ease to stay with her. But she was always indifferent to me. I thought that my 3-year-long care would eventually be reciprocated with true feelings. But until David came back, I realized that she would never truly love me. At this moment, standing at the ward door, my male pride made me try my best to hold back my tears. David, however, was looking at me like he was watching a show, provoking. "James, do you know why we used your cornea? Because you're a pilot, you've had good eyesight since you were a child. If it's transplanted to me, I'll definitely take good care of it." I clenched my fists so tightly that my nails dug deep into my palms. I tried to suppress the anger in my heart and stared at David, saying word by word, "David, you abandoned Sophia and left back then. Now you come back and pretend to be pitiful. Don't go too far." David just laughed indifferently. That laughter was extremely harsh to my ears. Sophia directly put down the kanji in her hand, walked quickly towards me, and then with a heavy slap landed on my face. "Our business is none of your business." The pain on my face was nothing compared to the pain in my heart. I looked at her desperately, hoping to find a trace of pity or guilt in her eyes, but there was nothing. My heart seemed to have fallen into an ice cellar, freezing cold. "Why?" I asked in a trembling voice. "Why are you treating me like this?" She slightly raised her eyes, glanced at me indifferently, and slowly said, "You owe me this." I was stunned, not understanding what I owed her. "From the beginning, you were with me for the money, weren't you? Now I'm just using money to get what I need. What's the problem?" Sophia's voice was cold and heartless. I opened my mouth but couldn't refute. Indeed, I had chosen to be with Sophia for the money at first. But in these 3 years, was the true love I gave worthless? I wanted to say something more, but I opened my mouth and nothing came out. David on the hospital bed looked at me triumphantly, in a posture of a winner. "James, leave. I'll give you a sum of money, just to buy your 3-year youth." I paused, not expecting Sophia to say such hurtful words. Seeing that I still didn't move, she added, "Don't worry, your 3 years won't be too cheap." I turned around and left, my steps heavy. These 3 years had all been a mistake. I left the hospital. All I had on me was a mobile phone, and there was no money in it because I usually transferred my meager salary to Sophia. I could only walk home alone. Coincidentally, it started to rain. This private hospital was far up in the mountains on the outskirts. The way down the mountain was long and difficult, and it was hard to get a taxi. I stumbled forward in the mud, getting covered in mud spots. The rain got heavier and heavier, and I was soaked like a drowned rat. Blood seeped from my right eye, and the pain was excruciating, but it still couldn't compare to the pain in my heart. I don't know how long I walked before the rain gradually subsided. The mobile phone rang with a ding-dong. It was a message from Sophia saying that money had been transferred. The message showed that $50 million had been credited to my bank card, along with a message from Sophia, buying your 3-year youth. Is it enough? I turned off my phone. Tears mixed with the rain streamed down my face, making it impossible to tell which were raindrops and which were tears. At this moment, I felt that my dignity had been trampled on, but I was powerless. I forced myself to walk to a small store on the roadside. But then my vision suddenly went blurry, and I lost consciousness. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself lying in a hospital bed again, but not in the previous hospital. The nurse said that my wound was infected and inflamed, and the inflammation had caused a high fever that wouldn't go down. I had been asleep for a day and a night. I quickly picked up my phone, hoping to receive a call or a message from Sophia, but the phone was blank. There was nothing but the transfer record. For someone like me who was sent to the hospital would first contact the family. Sophia must have known, but she didn't even say a word. She really didn't care whether I lived or died. Presumably, she was with David at this moment. I got up on my own, paid all the medical and hospitalization fees, and stayed in this hospital for 7 days until the inflammation had subsided almost completely before I was discharged and went home. During this period, Sophia only called once, briefly and clearly telling me to go home quickly and move my things out so that David could move in. Today, after being discharged, I planned to go to Sophia's villa to get my things. After taking a taxi, I arrived at the gate of Sophia's villa. But the fingerprint lock at the door couldn't be opened. It turned out that my fingerprint had been replaced. I tried to open it several times, but it failed. David came out from inside and walked to the door. He still looked at me provocatively. "James is back. Sorry, Sophia has moved me in, so she replaced the fingerprint with mine." I looked at David's provocative look. The anger and grievance in my heart intertwined. But I knew that I couldn't lose my composure at this moment and couldn't let him look down on me. I took a deep breath and said as calmly as possible, "Please step aside. I'm here to get my things." David didn't seem to have any intention of stepping aside. Instead, he folded his arms across his chest, with a mocking smile on his lips. James, Sophia said that she had someone pack your things and put them in the box at the door. I turned my head and saw that there was indeed a shabby box beside me. I walked over and opened the box. Inside were some of my clothes and items stuffed haphazardly. So, after living in Sophia's house for so long, all my things were only in one box. Looking at these things that were treated so casually, my heart was stabbed again. I picked up the box and was about to leave this place that was once full of memories but now seemed so strange. David called out to me from behind, "James, don't come to bother Sophia anymore. You and her are not from the same world." I didn't look back, but my steps paused slightly. I suddenly remembered that I had something important that I hadn't taken. I remembered that there was something even more important in my room. It wasn't in the box. It was a string of beads. I turned back and said to David, "Let me in. I left something important inside." David didn't plan to let me in. He still blocked my way. "Oh, what is it?" "James, you're not trying to stay and make Sophia pity you and let you stay in Sophia's house, are you?" Seeing his complacent look, I didn't want to say anything to him. I gently pushed him, just wanting to go in and get my things. But he suddenly fell to the ground, covering his face and pretending that I had hit him. The sound of a car coming came from behind me. It was Sophia who had come back. That's why he started to pretend to be pitiful, losing his previous provocative look. Sophia got out of the car. When she saw David on the ground, she trotted over and helped him up. David spoke first. "Sophia, I asked James to take his things, but he not only didn't take them but also punched me. My eye hurts a bit." Sophia glared at me and said, "James, you're really bold. You dare to hit the man I love in my house." I defended myself, I didn't. This male, green tea, fell to the ground on his own and framed me. I didn't hit him at all. Sophia walked towards me and slapped me hard again, angrily saying, "James, you're becoming more and more unaware of your place. Take your things and get out." I took a deep breath and walked straight to my room. At this moment, my room had become a storage room for sundries. My favorite posters and various airplane models were all in pieces. But the important bracelet I was looking for was gone. I searched every corner of the room but couldn't find it. I was not willing and searched again, but the bracelet was still nowhere to be found. I stood up, looking at the messy room, filled with disappointment. I walked up to Sophia, trying to suppress the anger in my heart, and asked, "Where's my bracelet? That was the last thing my grandmother left me." Sophia looked indifferent and said impatiently, "I don't know what bracelet you're talking about. Aren't all your things in that box? Hurry up and leave. Don't get in the way here." I pleaded unwillingly. That was left to me by my grandmother when she passed away. I was raised by my grandmother since I was a child. I regarded that bracelet as a treasure. Although it may only be worth a few dollars, it's very important to me. "What did you do with it?" Seeing that I still didn't seem to be leaving, David said, "James, is it that white Bodhi bracelet? I thought it was useless, so I threw it away. Don't look for it. I'll give you some money. It's enough for you to buy 100 of them." As expected, it was David again. I was furious. Just looking at his face made me sick. It took a lot of effort to hold back the urge to punch him. I turned to Sophia again. She still had a cold expression, but she was holding David's arm, looking like a little bird in front of him. She said gently, "David, your eyes haven't fully recovered yet. Go in first. Don't catch a cold in the wind." There were only Sophia and me left in the room. She took out her purse and took out a stack of money and threw it at me. The red banknotes slapped on my face one by one and then scattered on the ground, trampling my dignity along with them. "Is that enough? Can you leave now?" Sophia's tone was emotionless, more like a stranger. I replied helplessly, "Okay, I'll leave." I walked dazedly on the streets of New York, carrying my bag of luggage, looking as down and out as a dog. Although I got a lot of money, I lost my beloved flying career and my grandmother's relic. Suddenly, a luxury car came and stopped right beside me. A woman got out of the car. She had a familiar face, but she looked more mature and stable than before. She took my luggage first and threw it onto the seat of the luxury car without any disgust. Then she said to me, "Get in. I'll take you home." Olivia didn't say anything more. She pulled me into her car. Seeing that I was in a bad mood, she didn't say anything and just remained silent. Until the car stopped in front of a villa. She looked at me and said gently, "This is my house. You can stay here for now until things are sorted out." I followed her in and stayed there for the time being. Olivia was my first love in college and also David's junior in the club. David had a bad reputation in college. He was a playboy who flirted everywhere. He pursued Olivia for 3 years, but until graduation, Olivia never accepted him. By accident, she was with me for half a year until she went abroad to study, and then we broke up amicably. I had long heard that she had returned to New York and became a rising star in the design industry, but I had never seen her. Judging from her actions today, it seemed that she already knew about all my experiences. Shortly after I settled down at Olivia's house, Sophia unexpectedly called. I thought there was still the divorce matter to be dealt with, so I answered the phone. This time, I spoke first to avoid looking more humble. Are you talking about the divorce? I don't want anything. See you at the gate of the Civil Affairs Bureau on Monday. There was a few seconds silence on the other end of the phone, as if she was a bit shocked. James, are you in such a hurry to divorce? Sophia's tone wasn't as cold as before, and there was even a hint of reluctance. Isn't it you who are in a hurry? It's better for everyone to get divorced earlier. After saying that, I hung up the phone without giving her a chance to speak. On Monday morning, I arrived at the gate of the Civil Affairs Bureau as promised. Soon, Sophia came with David. Sophia was still hesitating, and David was adding fuel to the fire beside her. Sophia, go ahead. After you two get divorced, we'll get our marriage license. It's a double happy event to finish two things in one day. Sophia, didn't you always want to have a home with me? I'm back, so let James go. Under David's tugging, Sophia walked into the Civil Affairs Bureau. We completed the divorce procedures smoothly. As soon as we went out, David pulled Sophia and went back in to get their marriage license. Watching this scene, I felt it was extremely ironic. Just after they completed the procedures and before they could even warm up the red marriage certificates in their hands, they saw Olivia holding my hand and carefully tying a scarf around me. Sophia and David stood there like clowns, frozen in place as if they couldn't move their legs. Suddenly, David came to his senses, left Sophia behind, and rushed straight towards Olivia. Olivia, why didn't you tell your senior when you came back? I've missed you so much after all these years. Olivia replied coldly and distantly, no need. We have nothing to talk about. Seeing David acting like a lovesick puppy, Sophia was furious. She came over to pull David away, but David glared at her and refused to leave Olivia's side. Sophia's face froze, while Olivia remained calm. Now it was Sophia's turn to be embarrassed. Olivia took my arm and walked past them. We could still hear David, who was standing there watching us, say, Olivia is still as beautiful as she was in college. Sophia was so angry that her eyes almost popped out, but she couldn't stop David from staring at our car. After Olivia took me home, David called. The first words out of his mouth were a gritted teeth threat. James, you'd better stay away from Olivia, or don't blame me for being rude to you. I hung up the phone without giving him a chance to say a second word. I wasn't worried about what he could do to me, instead, I was more concerned about Olivia. Olivia brought a cup of hot milk and told me to drink it. She said that there would be a bidding conference in a few days and she wanted to take me with her. Her company might become a competitor of Sophia's, and she asked if I was willing to go. Since I had lost my job, it would be good for me to broaden my horizons and explore other development directions. Soon, the day of the bidding conference arrived. As expected, Sophia also attended with David. When Olivia and I, with her arm in mine, appeared at the entrance of the venue, David suddenly shook off Sophia's hand and quickly walked towards us, leaving Sophia standing there in shock. Olivia, you're here, he said with a big smile on his face, and then he reached out to hold Olivia's hand. Olivia dodged to the side. But David didn't seem embarrassed at all and continued to get closer to her. Seeing this, I pulled Olivia behind me and used my body to block David. David looked unhappy but had no choice. He could only mutter weakly, you don't deserve to be in this kind of place. Olivia sneered and replied, David, you're wrong. The senior consultant I want by my side isn't something just anyone can aspire to. Besides, if someone like you can be here, this event probably isn't that high class. Although David was mocked, he still stubbornly stared at Olivia and refused to leave. Sophia finally reacted and walked towards us, forcing a fake smile. But David's eyes were still fixed on Olivia, not even blinking. Seeing Sophia's face turn, she finally couldn't hold it in. David, we should go. Mark is waiting for us over there. Sophia tugged at David's sleeve, but he shook her off. David said impatiently, ordering her, go get Olivia a cup of coffee. She likes it sweet, so add more sugar. Sophia's face turned extremely ugly. She bit her lip, and a flash of anger appeared in her eyes, but she quickly suppressed it. She took a deep breath, forced a smile, and turned to get coffee for Olivia. After a while, Sophia came over with the coffee and offered it to Olivia. Olivia didn't even look at it, just stared coldly at David. David quickly reached out to take the coffee, saying obsequiously, "Olivia, if you don't drink it, I will. I like any taste you like." Olivia wrinkled her nose in disgust and pulled me away. David was about to chase after us, but Sophia held him back tightly. "David, that's enough. Don't you forget who you belong to now." Sophia finally exploded, her voice trembling. But David shook her off. "Leave me alone. My heart only belongs to Olivia." He finally revealed his true feelings. There were rare tears in Sophia's eyes. Olivia pulled me aside and said, "The farce is over, and it's time for the main event. We didn't come here today to humiliate Sophia and David. We have more important things to do." Olivia was determined to win this bidding conference. Among the powerful competitors in this bidding, apart from Olivia's company, the toughest rival was Sophia's group. However, this time Olivia was fully prepared and just waiting for the bidding to start. After it started, Olivia presented her plan in detail, including architectural features and various ideas. After she finished speaking, there was a round of applause, and several big shots praised her. When it was Sophia's turn to present, her plan seemed a bit old-fashioned. But because of her close relationship with the boss of the organizer, the final result still slightly favored her. At this time, we had to take out the gift we had prepared for Sophia long ago. The host was announcing, "The company that has won this bidding is Sophia's." "Wait." Olivia's voice interrupted the host who was reading. Then she took out a stack of documents and distributed them to the leaders. "Here is the situation of Sophia Group's tax evasion and tax fraud in recent years. Please take a look." Olivia's sonorous words caused an uproar at the scene, and everyone started talking. Sophia was stunned in place, not knowing how to refute for a moment. In the past 10 years, Sophia Group had seriously evaded and defrauded taxes through connections, and the taxes paid were less than 1/10 of what was actually due. It turned out that Olivia had been investigating Sophia Group recently, just for this day. The leader of the organizer was shocked and turned to Sophia, asking, "Sophia, what on earth is going on?" Sophia then came to her senses and hurriedly explained, "Things aren't as they seem. This woman must be slandering me." As she spoke, she walked towards Olivia, raising her hand to slap her, but was stopped by David. Sophia's raised arm was grabbed by David and then forcefully thrown away. She stumbled and almost fell to the ground. Sophia looked incredulous, while David was only focused on pleasing Olivia. "Sophia, how could you hit someone?" David frowned but didn't help Sophia up. Sophia turned to look at me. "James, I treated you fairly well before, right? Why are you so cruel as to team up with this woman to frame me? Don't you remember that it was me who paid the medical expenses for your grandmother when she was bedridden? Not mentioning my grandmother was fine. But when she brought it up, I remembered the days when I became her lover for money. You still dare to mention my grandmother. Sophia, you don't deserve to mention her." I almost shouted this sentence, and even David next to me was startled. "Back then, I was really short of money, and I did get together with you for the money. But after 3 years as a substitute, plus my eye, I've already paid you back." Sophia started to cry, but I just felt annoyed. David also said, "Sophia, pay attention to your image in this kind of occasion. There are so many important people here. Crying like this makes it seem like we, Olivia, are bullying you." David's words were like a knife to Sophia's heart. She seemed to realize that the man she loved deeply was also acting like a sycophant to someone else. Olivia took my hand and smiled at Sophia. "Sophia, I know exactly how you treated James back then. It's too late to regret now. If you had obediently given the project to me, it would have been fine. But since you insisted on competing with me, don't blame me for exposing your dirty secrets. And this is the price you pay for hurting James." Sophia wanted to say something more, but Olivia pulled me away without looking back, leaving only a sentence. "I've sent these evidences to major media by email. If you have the energy, you'd better hurry up and clean up the mess." Olivia wasn't kidding. She really exposed all kinds of illegal operations of Sophia Group to the media, including tax evasion, financial fraud, and many other aspects. Sophia hadn't been seen in public for a long time. Presumably, she was already in a mess. I also found some information that was enough to give her the final blow. Coincidentally, she called and asked to meet me. I thought this would be a good opportunity to tell her. In the coffee shop, Sophia, who used to have a radiant face, now had deep dark circles under her eyes. She no longer had her usual elegance. "You're here," Sophia said softly when she saw me approaching. "I ordered your favorite iced Americano without sugar. It'll be ready soon." She seemed a bit nervous, and there was even a hint of humility in her tone. I slowly sat down opposite her, looking into her eyes. "But I don't like iced Americano, especially without sugar. I hate it. What I like is cappuccino, and I like it with sugar. She looked up at me in shock, as if she couldn't believe it. You're probably going to say that I clearly like iced Americano, right? That's because when I first met you, you were drinking iced Americano, and I was just trying to please you. I said this with a bitter smile, and I saw Sophia's eyes gradually become more relieved. So you don't want to stay by my side? Don't you care at all about our 3 years together? I didn't answer, just looked at her quietly. She was silent for a while, and then a tear dropped into her coffee. I'm sorry, James. I didn't realize I couldn't live without you until you left. I'm in the most difficult time now. Can you stay with me? Hearing her sobbing plea, I just felt it was ridiculous. But Sophia, it's all too late. From the moment you took my cornea and gave it to David, from the moment you told me to get out, it was over between us. Sophia's body trembled violently, and her eyes were filled with regret and pain. James, I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. I didn't expect you to really leave me. Actually, I fell in love with you a long time ago. When David came back, I didn't want to take your cornea to save him. It was him who mentioned some of our past, and I softened my heart and agreed. Later, when I saw your state, I regretted it so much. I ruined you. But everything has happened, and it can't be undone. I'm sorry, James, I'm sorry. I looked at her coldly. The pain in my heart was still hard to ease, and I didn't want to say more. I just told her to live a good life with David. After the company got into trouble, David seemed to disappear. I haven't seen him for several days. It seems you don't know what kind of person David really is. I took out the evidence and put it on the table. Sophia wiped her tears and asked me, "What is this?" During his time abroad, David cheated and swindled countless people. He not only defrauded money and deceived women but was also a complete thief. During his 2-year study abroad, he swindled 34 female college students on campus. After graduation, at work, he cheated his colleagues and bosses. He changed jobs 12 times in a row until he returned to the country. Guess how he went blind in one eye? 3 girls took revenge on him and blinded him. These are foreign news reports and indictments. He always escaped quickly and wasn't caught until he finally returned to the country. After that, you found a cornea for him and took good care of him. He deceived you. Did you know all this? Sophia was so shocked that she couldn't speak. She just covered her face and cried. I continued, he's no longer the David you knew in college. He's a liar and a thief. Sophia still seemed unable to believe it. She just murmured, how could this be? How could this be? I took a sip of the cappuccino that had just arrived and turned to leave. Instead of whether it was possible or not, it would be better to go and see how much money was left in the company as soon as possible. After I gave the evidence to Sophia, Olivia and I went on a trip. 2 months later, after a round-the-world trip, I heard news about Sophia Group again. Sophia Group was under investigation for tax evasion and financial fraud. During this period, its stock price plummeted until it was delisted. As for David, I only heard that he embezzled public funds and was sued by Sophia in court. Walking on the street, I felt mixed emotions. I didn't have the pleasure of successful revenge but rather a few more sighs. Suddenly, a black car came speeding towards me. The situation was urgent, and it was hard for me to avoid it. Just as it seemed about to hit me, another red car appeared beside me and crashed into the black car. For a moment, the 2 cars collided. Due to the high speed, the red car rolled several times before coming to a stop. The surrounding people quickly called the police, and the police arrived at the scene soon. The driver of the black car wasn't seriously injured. When he was rescued from the car, he was still cursing. James, you damned bastard. You stole my Olivia and reported me to that bitch Sophia, getting me sued. Now I'm facing huge compensation and imprisonment. Are you satisfied? That person was David. It turned out to be an attempted murder. He was still cursing as the police took him away. The person in the red car was Sophia. She was seriously injured and on the verge of death. When I and the police were rescuing her, she tightly held my hand and said, "I'm sorry." I didn't say anything. Looking at her like this, I felt a mix of emotions. After all, she got injured to save me. I paid her medical expenses and told the doctor to take good care of her, then I left. 3 months later, Sophia was discharged from the hospital and continued to be under investigation. She called to ask if I could go and see her, but I refused. She didn't cherish me when I loved her, and now that she regretted it, I didn't care anymore. I still transferred some money to her. There must be many places where she needed money in this situation. It was to repay her for saving my life, and from then on, we were even. Not long after, Sophia Group went bankrupt. After Sophia recovered from her injuries, she was imprisoned. David was also put on trial and sentenced to life imprisonment until he died. This could be considered an explanation to those he had deceived. Olivia and I jointly founded Thunder Group. In a few years, it became very successful, and we also had a lovely daughter. After the haze, every day is a good day. If you like this story, remember to like and share it. This is the greatest support for me.